Welcome back to the Vires and Numeris podcast, episode number 43 with Rocco Marchiori. He makes sure I get his name right in this episode. I had to ask him. First off, special thanks to our sponsors, Cheesecake Swap. Cheesecake Swap is an AMM and yield farm aggregator. Go over there and check out what they're up to. They have their own token, much like the popular Pancake Swap, but offer some different stuff. They have some NFTs, so check them out, cheesecakeswap.com. As always, nothing on this show is financial advice, including the sponsorships. Nothing said on the show reflects their opinions either. Secondly, shortthebanks.com, some of the best Bitcoin and crypto merchandise over there. Go check them out. It's Short the Banks. And also, lastly, flashcoin.io. Flashcoin.io is a reinvention of Litecoin built to scale. Go check them out. One of my favorite things about them, I've mentioned a number of times, is their in-app spot for merchants to sell goods and services over there. So check that out. Check out flashcoin.io. And without further ado, let's get into this episode. Welcome back to the Vires and Numeris podcast, episode number 43 with Rocco Marchiori. How do you say it again? Marchiori. Sorry. Dude, the CH in Italian always gets me. I'm supposed to know a little bit of Italian. And he's the vice president of risk management at Blockware Mining. Welcome to the show today, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to talk Bitcoin.
Absolutely. Yeah, I saw you guys in the news the other day, and then realized that I already knew somebody at Blockware, that you and I were friends on following each other on Twitter. So it's good to talk to you today and learn about what you're up to and what Blockware is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share.
Yeah, so I always ask people like a little bit about their upbringing and stuff, and like, are we just a bunch of misfits that ended up in crypto, or what kind of student were you, and where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a suburb outside the city of Chicago called Park Ridge. If you've visited Chicago from out of state, you've probably flown into an airport called O'Hare. And so Park Ridge is like 10 minutes away from the airport. So it's this town that has, accessibility to the city and all the great things that go on there. Also kind of, away from the city, so you don't have to deal with all the noise and all that. So perfect little town to get good exposure there.
Yeah, were you interested in technology? What were your interests as a kid?
Man, kind of growing up with the internet, it was something that, I didn't even like think about at the time, right? Kind of going from, I had, from the cell phone perspective, had, not a smartphone, and then, getting older, discovering applications, trying out all those, right? Gradually, being the pioneers of like the social media apps and all that. So it's definitely something I was interested in. Really, I didn't, get a technical understanding or interest in until I started really my career in public accounting, which allowed me to kind of study how the internet actually works from a foundational perspective. But yeah, it's always been something that I've been keeping up with, trying out new apps and just seeing, all the different avenues and value that it could provide.
Yeah, imagine like some 25-year-old or like, somebody in that era, they don't remember like having to hit the button as many, if you were sending a text, you had to hit the character like 4 times or whatever, the button 4 times to get one to move the letter all the way or whatever, So it's just crazy how now we're doing like, now our money is on our phone, and it's just like people are still reluctant about blockchain. I'm like, you realize this is all inevitable, right? But yeah, it's funny to like the way you put that. I hadn't really thought about that in a while, how far we've really come with like just smartphones alone. And in our lifetime, we've kind of been the guinea pigs for a lot of this stuff about how it's like playing out. So it's interesting. Were you obviously you studied finance or business at University of Illinois. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Were you interested in money? Like you obviously were interested in money. Were you thinking about starting a business back then, or getting into business, or what?
Yeah, so as strange and as weird as this sounds, I kind of always knew I wanted to be an accountant, just because come from a family of accountants. My dad is bookkeeper of the family business, which is like plumbing, contracting. My brother is also a CPA. My mom ran the finances of the house, so she knows, a decent amount about finance and money as well. And, that sort of interest kind of spurred, I guess, entrepreneurship feelings that I've had growing up. I always wanted to start a business, always was saving money, investing money, was very interested in that. And then, so at the University of Illinois, I actually was admitted to the business school, like direct admit. So I didn't have to go on campus, decide what I wanted to do, maybe apply, get some sort of GPA. I was kind of already in, and that was really the deciding factor for me. I watched some of your other podcasts. I know you're an Ohio State guy, but the other school I was actually considering was Michigan. That was like my stretch school that I applied to and got admitted to. But the idea of having to go there and basically get a 4.0 my freshman year was knowing that I'd want to get involved in Greek life and a ton of other stuff just wasn't something that I wanted to take the risk on. So I took the direct admission, and Illinois is just a fantastic accounting school. It's literally like the top one or two in the country every year with UT Austin. So it was honestly perfect fit for me, and I have no regrets.
My Big Ten brethren, nonetheless, I like you a lot more that you decided not to go to Michigan.
I definitely think I made the right call.
Decent academics, not such a great football school anymore, but that's another podcast.
Oh man, you're just like my Ohio State friends that just rag on me constantly for the athletic aspect of it. So
yeah, we're relentless.
I'm used to it.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how old you are, and you don't have to disclose that if you don't want to, but when did you find Bitcoin? Were you at Illinois?
Yeah, so I'm 28 years old, so about 4 or 5 years removed from university. First time I heard about Bitcoin was in college. A couple of my fraternity brothers had some. At the time, I think there was just so much going on and just trying to get decent grades, have fun, meet people, explore new ideas that I never really took, I guess, an immediate interest in it. I had always heard about it consistently just through the bull and bear markets in 2013, I think it was, when I was like a freshman in college. So yeah, I had a couple buddies that were into it. For me, I was also, in addition to accounting, really interested in finance, making portfolios, educating people on, picking stocks, read a ton of financial books. I come from the Warren Buffett school of investing, the intelligent investor, buy and hold, never sell, those kind of ideas. So it didn't click for me at first, being completely honest about it. But, obviously, through some of my studies and whatnot, I did have the, aha moment, shortly after graduating college.
What was that moment for you? Was it Bitcoin first or Ethereum, or how did that work?
It was Bitcoin. And I think the aha moment for me, as I mentioned, I was really interested in investing in equities. So in college, I, founded a club that sought to bring investing education to people. I also, with some buddies, we would sit in the market research lab that we had on campus and be on the Bloomberg terminals and all those other great resources that they had, building portfolios in which, we were pooling our own money together and making picks and, tried to be like a, de facto hedge fund manager while in college. And, what I'd come to realize after having invested my entire life and then really into it in college is, the role of quantitative easing, Federal Reserve, all of that stuff was going on in its rather infancy during that time. And, reflecting back on it, I kind of just realized it's there's not anything really special that I'm doing, right? I could have thrown a dart, at a dartboard at the time and made money, right? The equities were going up. And yeah, then I, started to realize what the role or what was driving that, right? It almost felt like the price discovery mechanism was sort of leaving the equity markets, which was, I didn't appreciate that, right? There has to be an art or a skill to this. And yeah, I just knew the role of the Federal Reserve and kind of how they were implicating in stocks and taking everything into consideration, right? We've been on this bull market in equities for a very long time. You could equate that to some of the monetary policy decisions that that the Fed has made. And yeah, so really when I truly understood Bitcoin, had that aha moment that like, I started to think, what is with, these people what is about this asset? Why are they never selling, right? It sort of clicked to me, the value of a, inflation hedge, what gold is, what purpose did gold sort of serve, when it was part of we're on the gold standard, things like that. Then I really had the aha moment. And yeah, I've just been, kind of all in since.
Yeah, I can tell from just listening to you speak that you have a good grasp on like the macro issues, like why Bitcoin's important. So, where I would say like what I would ask next would be like what did the people around you think? Did you have to convince people around you, like, is Frank your brother? Was he already interested in crypto? And it looks like you said you mentioned you come from a long line of CPAs. It looks like he's a CPA too from looking at your site, and you guys work together. So I was curious if that's your brother, and if like who red pilled who on crypto.
So we kind of got involved or interested at relatively the same time. We did have so I mentioned we were I was in Lake Tahoe last week, and we were celebrating the 30th birthday of a friend we lost, a very close family friend we lost last year, long battle with cancer, and he got us all in the space. You could look him up. His name is Matt D'Souza. He started like 3 blockchain type companies.
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and he is my brother's age. They've grown up, and Matt actually went to U of I as well. So he kind of, also he was basically the driving factor of, my brother Frank, and then me, and then ultimately, the Blockware mining was one of the ventures that he started, along with the hedge fund, in which we kind of started doing bookkeeping services for, which we could, get into later. But it was, kind of at the same time, and it really was Matt who kind of got us started on this entire journey.
Well, that's pretty cool. I didn't realize that. It's so terrible to read about his passing. That was like a year ago.
Right? Yep. COVID.
I read about that. So that led you to mining. What about, can you tell us a little bit more about Blockware, like where it's located? I think that you're in Chicago still, right? But isn't the mining facility going to open up in Kentucky?
That's correct. So yeah, we're headquartered in Chicago. We're really kind of in still that startup phase where, everyone's kind of remote. My brother and I are in Chicago. Our CEO and president's over in South Carolina. And yes, we are. We also have our chief mining officers in Paducah, Kentucky, which is where our first facility is going to go. So we had previously done some like hosting at some other data centers in the Kentucky area. And so now we're kind of putting our own, foot on the map here with the first one in Paducah, it's called.
Yeah, I'll pull up the picture here real quick for everybody to see from the website. It does look pretty cool. I would love to go check one of these places out someday. Have you walked through the facility yourself yet, or no?
I have not been to this facility, actually. One, because I only got started here like 2 months ago, but in my previous role, I've actually had the opportunity to tour a few data centers as I was like an auditor for financial services companies that, had large data center tech operations that work with a lot of banks. So I've been to a few data centers, not that one specifically though, yet.
Okay. So are you the guy, you guys just raised $25 million recently, oversubscribed round of funding. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Are you the guy that determines how that money is spent, or is that Frank, or is that you guys together, or you just help keep track of it?
So I'm not the decider of how the funds are allocated. That's more of my brother and our CEO Michael's role. What I will say though is, we kind of raised the money with the purposes of, building the facility. And really what my role and kind of what I've done in my previous experiences is, once we deploy the capital into assets, is how do we construct systems to, one, keep track of the assets, to make sure that they're operating in the most, the best capacity, right? Maximum uptime, minimal downtime. So basically having the ability to take the information from those assets, compartmentalize it so that we can make better decisions. And then also, maintain transparency with our stakeholders and our investors as well.
Yeah, that's super cool. It's people that are big. I like the ethos of your website too. I was reading, it talks about freedom and stuff. I'm such a big freedom and decentralization guy. It's funny because people that believe in like the macro Keynesian modern monetary theory, whatever you want to call it, Marxism, they don't understand like the Austrian or just the basic idea of like capitalism, peer-to-peer voluntary exchange. Like that's really all it is. And that, it's funny because the way you said, like you're overseeing like all these very intricate little things and you're making sure that like you're as productive as possible. But people that are you have these professors and economists that win Nobel Prizes that think that like these sort of like inputs don't matter. Like you can just like, they can just like come up with some formula and come up with these sort of economic calculations that you are specifically making for a company, and they're trying to do it on such a vast scale. It's just like, it's laughable, like I think that what you guys are doing and what all of these companies in crypto are doing is just like, it's just really bringing the free market to like the forefront again. And I don't know, I'm just like, I'm passionate about it. And I think this is like our Hail Mary at like freedom and free markets and stuff. I don't know. It's like my little rant.
Yeah. Michael Sawyer said it best. I forgot who he was speaking to. He said, all your models are broken, right? You can't account for these externalities and, closed systems. And, some things that you just can't explain, right? And that's the beauty of free market and, just giving people the ability to choose, how they want to store their wealth, what they want to use to transact. That stuff is all fascinating to me as well.
Yeah, prices and very small things like you think it's like such a small thing like prices, like how we determine prices and stuff. But like what you're talking about, like if a machine is like if you can get so much, if you can just get a little bit more out of another machine and that it's worth it, the government just doesn't get it, or they just, I don't know. Maybe it's intentional. I'm not really sure, but it's interesting to think about. How many mining rigs are you guys, do you have an idea of how many mining rigs you want to put in that building? Or is the building up? Is that the actual building there?
No, so that's actually where we had hosted some of our earlier machines at. The one that we're building, it's 14,000 square feet. It's going to host about 10,000 rigs. So this is really a large expansion on our existing fleet, and then also, stuff that we actually have direct control over. We have a lot of great hosting partners and arrangements and things like that. And I just think having the ability to kind of determine your own operation, right, and create jobs in the process is always just something that I've always wanted to do and be responsible for.
Yeah, very cool. What would you say, like qualitatively, that the average person might not know, like something that like you see looking at these sort of, I know you've only been there for a couple months, but you've done other things in crypto too, like looking at BlockBalance, I think it's called. Is that right?
Yep. That's go ahead.
I have that on the list. Well, I have that in a couple questions. I'm going to ask you about that, but
okay.
Like just what sort of things would the average person not realize is so costly to a mining facility, for example?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What I know that you guys are you are up and running at some level, right?
Yeah, we have currently 4,000 mining rigs deployed in a couple different locations in Washington State, Kentucky, New York State, and then also Newfoundland and Labrador, which is in Canada.
Oh, okay. So what would be something that like the average person might not realize that is like high cost to a business like that? I mean, I know these mining facilities are super expensive to run. Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously you're aware power costs are, the most relevant thing. The machines themselves, depending on the different manufacturers and models, right? They all need some good TLC and love, and they don't always, you put them there and they don't just, always run as they're advertised, right? So, the ability to, tinker with different environmental factors and just different, I mean, you've probably seen the variety of styles of data center, like Bitcoin mining data centers you could have, right? It's not just like we looked at, like just four walls, right? There are many factors, and really the machines themselves operate under different conditions. So that's, really one of the challenging things is how do you perform like maintenance or remediation on the machines, capturing that information, then to, like I said, tinker with environmental factors to try to get the most, uptime and availability out of these machines, because downtime is costly, especially when, the difficulty has adjusted. So, time when a machine is not running is opportunity cost or lost money in that regard.
Are you guys at the liberty to say they pay you in Bitcoin? You guys get paid in Bitcoin there, or how does that work?
Still getting paid in fiat. That, I pretty much just take all my fiat and deploy it into anyway. So we haven't structured that, but it's, like I mentioned, very startup-y, still trying to get, some of the normal operating functions and things going first and foremost.
Are the guys that founded it, are they open to different types? You mentioned how there's different types of mining, facilities. Are they open to different types, or you guys have like one uniform idea that you like to go with when you build one?
I think we're going to be open in the future. We work with a co-locator or a company that like designs the stuff, and that, given their experience, that's kind of the model that we have found success with. So we're going to, obviously do that or try to replicate that with our first one. After that, I think the opportunity is there to experiment. I know, stuff you see going on in like New York, where, it's kind of like sitting next to like a dam or something like that. I really like the ideas that, people can put these up anywhere, and it's not all one shape or size. And it's really just, up to the creativity of the individual and, kind of using the resources that are around them efficiently.
I love the free market. There's going to be so much cool stuff that we get to see. Hopefully I'm around for it, for a long time to watch this, because I'm like so excited about what Bitcoin and crypto in 2050 looks like. It's going to be a wild, I think it'll be wild to see everybody using it. And I know that's a long time away, but the upside is so vast. It's unbelievable. You worked at McDonald's Corp for a while too, as supervisor of global internal audits there. What would you say that something that you learned at McDonald's is such a it's a powerhouse corporation. Like, what would you say that you learned there that you've taken with you to the other places?
Yeah, so working for McDonald's was, in my opinion, was a very awesome experience, because I got to really see how decentralization works, right? The franchising business or model is a form of decentralization, right? So to see how, we may call them entrepreneurs, or in McDonald's case, restaurateurs, right? If you give them the decision-making power and you give them, access to resources, but really operate independently outside of the decision-making of one centralized group of people or entity, like that's how you scale, right? Like that's how you, start a couple of restaurants in the United States and scale to the entire world, so much so that, you're the second largest owner of property in the world outside of the Vatican. I think McDonald's is a really good case study, and obviously there are a ton of parallels with crypto and scaling and individual empowerment. It was great to see how that kind of functions from the inside before I left there and inevitably came here full time.
I didn't even think about that aspect. That's a really good point. Like the idea of like the franchise and franchisees and how it's like a decentralized sort of corporation too. That's an interesting way to look at that. Yeah. had never thought of that before. I would love to own a Chick-fil-A personally. I think that would be a good one to have. You know, I always see it popping off over the drive-through when I drive by it.
The
It's always,
lines, yeah.
yeah, the line's crazy, man. People love Chick-fil-A, so I think that would be a good one too. Interesting to think about that though. Just the business model of like, you know, how did they get so successful? Maybe there's people look at them as like a monolithic brand, and they obviously are huge, but maybe there's more to it. Like you're saying, like maybe a lot of their success came from trusting people you know, different localities to make these sort of personal decisions for their store. Like, I don't know how much leeway they get on things like on prices or whatever, but I'm sure there's like some little things that they can like, you know, just give their own sort of like vibe to the business or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and I think it boils down to that simplistic or simplicity approach, right? Do something simple and do it great and do it efficient, right? And I think that sort of is, like I said, in parallel with sort of the Bitcoin protocol, right? It's, you know, all the rules are out there. It's simple. You could choose to participate if you want. No one's going to tell you no or you can't. And that's the beauty of it.
I love that. The absolute rules of Bitcoin that people don't appreciate, that don't really, they just think it's like email money or something. People from the outside, they don't realize how like really intricate it all is, but it's at the same time simplistic set of rules. Unlike the government or something, you know, the Fed or whatever, you know, changing the rules of the game during the game. We know the rules, and it's in the protocol. So, what do you see like in the future? Are you gonna you want to stick in crypto for a long time? Is that where you're gonna make your bones forever? You hope, or what?
For the very long foreseeable future, I mean, I've always viewed this as a 10 to 20 year journey. I've always wanted to play long-term games with long-term minded people, right? I think, you know, a byproduct of some of the, you know, investing or monetary decisions, people are so, you know, everyone's a trader now. No one really settles down, has conviction in an idea or an investment or an industry and wants to see it through. And, you know, blockchain, crypto, all this stuff. I mean, there's so much room for innovation, and it's going to permeate every single industry, the accounting profession for sure. I mean, I've already seen how, and drawing back on, you know, some of my interests in, I don't want to talk about history or historical, right? What is the historical function of a bookkeeper, right? We've evolved from, you know, I think accounting was started in like 6,000 BC with like a single entry model, right? Then in like ancient Rome and Mesopotamia, the double entry system of accounting, which is kind of like how the modern system works, of like debits and credits. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, really the path we're heading towards is like this next evolution, right? Triple entry accounting, right? So same thing as double entry accounting, right? Both sides of the transaction do the inflows and outflows. But then the third aspect is like casting that transaction into a public ledger, like protected by cryptography that can be queried by anyone, right? Unless you were granted, you know, in the case of maybe an accountant, right? You would get that public key and you know that it was for this party and this party, right? And no one kind of really needs to know who those are, other than, you know, here are the public ledgers of those entities, right? And here's the transaction that was made. I think that's fascinating. Like I said, I've always been big on transparency. That's why blockchain was so enticing to me, is that it's all on chain. Things are easier to be confirmed. There's, you know, you don't need to do these confirmations with external parties necessarily. It's efficient, right? We protect security. It's completely open source. Anyone can view it. That is like why I'm so excited about where like the accounting space can go over the next 10, 20, even 30 years. I think it's, you know, like you said, it's inevitable. These sorts of long-term trends, increasingly incorporating technology into, you know, different areas and different professions. And like I said, accounting is not going to be not impacted by this, I should say. So that's why I'm, you know, happy to be here and happy to try to I don't know, steer some people that are in accounting that, my network, I've got a lot of accounting friends, and just trying to get them to understand how this all works and kind of where it's going. It's been fun.
I definitely agree with everything you just said. I think that eventually people, it probably, like, we're not far off from this, is like, I think probably people's someone's like in their entire life is probably going to be on chain. Like, they're probably going to be, I think I might have wrote about this in one of maybe my first book or whatever, but you're going to be born and you'll be on some sort of like centralized blockchain. Your birth certificate, everything will probably be on there. Like, it's just, I think that's probably inevitable at some point. Like, at least some societies will probably try that out first, I think. But it's going to be very interesting. Like, you were noting all like these important characteristics of decentralized, just Bitcoin in particular, but just where we're going, because for so long, like the last 50, 100 years since the Fed and stuff like that, it's been like basically a system, just, it's like a house of cards where, I mean, you obviously know, and I know, like how shady it really is, like the average person, inflation's finally in the news. I think I saw a headline today in a newspaper, somebody posted on Twitter, it was like 5.3%, but really we know also that they're like gaming the CPI, and they just got rid of the M2, and there's all these sort of like just blatant flashing signs, neon lights that say like this is unsustainable, that Bitcoin is the future. So I just wonder, like, for you, is it Bitcoin only? Are you into smart contracts and Ethereum? This is something I didn't mention that I was going to ask you, but I'm curious, like, is that something that you're interested in? Are you interested in smart contracts and stuff too?
Definitely interested in. I could say my stance is that I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, but I'm not like from this camp that's like, I'm not going to say toxic, but like I do understand there are protocols with other value. And I could say that by and large, Bitcoin is the most important, the most valuable, and I hope and will do things that I can to continue to make it the most valuable protocol. But yeah, that doesn't, I'm interested in smart contracts and DeFi because I think I see, the larger picture, right? For me, Bitcoin, digital gold, this immutable, pristine form of collateral, right? The ability to take that and use it, let's say, in smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain, like that has utility too. And, I'm all about, freedom of choice for the individual. There are great, applications, user interfaces on Ethereum that I think are a little bit more advanced than Bitcoin, because I do think they have just more developers working on it, right? And, I'm not going to say that that shouldn't be allowed. I think there are different properties of the two protocols, obviously, right? Proof of work, and now, Ethereum's trying to migrate to a proof of stake model. I think there are different characteristics, and, I think people, whether they know it or not, should, be aware of those properties, right? Why one model versus the other? What are the trade-offs? What are the benefits between the two? Sometimes I think people get lost when you kind of go down, I'd say, like the altcoin rabbit hole or these other extension protocols. I don't like, I do respect Ethereum and the things that they're doing, and Bitcoin, by far, I hope will, win the race, but I don't think it has to be some sort of monotheistic type ideas. I think there's this less of a zero-sum game mentality in this space where it's let's grow the pie and not fight over, what slices are remaining first. That'll bootstrap, the industry by and large. And I think that's healthy. And so I'm a fan of both. I understand the differences. But yeah.
I tend to agree with you. I think Bitcoin would like persist. I don't know. I could see Ethereum passing it up, but the reason I kind of was on another rant about like, you're being birthed, you're birthed and you're on the blockchain from birth or whatever. But like, the reason I was mentioning that is because we're going to have like these different protocols. They're already here. We can see them, but there's going to be one for the government, I think. And that's going to be like the one where like, you're probably going to have your birth certificate on there, and it's probably going to be your US dollar coin, whatever. There is a USDC now, but whatever they want to call Fed coin or whatever. And it'll probably be like, this little thing where you really don't like have an option in some regard to use and to be like tracked or whatever. But that's like a little bit conspiratorial, but it does sound like that's where we're heading. And like people need to do, that's why I like doing this podcast, is because even little shows, they help people. They really, people can learn the differences between the decentralized and the centralized. If they can just shut you off or whatever, it's a really scary proposition that they can just shut your money off.
Yeah. So ultimately, I think you bring up great points. Why I want Bitcoin to win out is because it does have those security aspects built into it, secured by proof of work, right?
Right.
The crux of blockchain is that it's so transparent that if given into the hands of someone who wants to track people, they could do that, right? And if it's not a concept that the individual who are interacting with these protocols actually understand how that's possible or why that's possible, then, right, that's when you get into, dystopian-esque scenarios, which, I hope, I'm optimistic that there are enough, I think people in professional services, accountants, lawyers, that understand these differences and kind of how we're going to mold, America's principles of freedom and all that stuff into those protocols so that it doesn't turn into something like that. Because, one, you don't always need a blockchain for everything, right? People say you do, you really don't. Sometimes centralized databases, they work, right? When they get too large, they become attack vectors, which is why we're seeing a lot of, large institutions, tech companies, right, in the news now. They're just getting hacked, and it's just it's a shame that they're people are trying to claim that they're requesting the payment in Bitcoin, that we got to try to shut down the internet because they're asking for Bitcoin in payment, when it's like, shouldn't you be instructing your sysadmins to protect the data better and maybe leave it less of a vector itself so that this doesn't happen. I just think when I hear some of the stuff in the news, I just laugh, and it's just like, oh my gosh, you're not going to turn off the internet. That's not happening. So, you're not going to shut down Bitcoin because you can't do that.
Yeah, it seems like more people are finally realizing, like, it's taken 12 years, but it does seem like more people in like whether it be like DC or whatever, area you want to talk about, Wall Street or whatever, like people are finally coming to terms with like Bitcoin's invincibility or whatever, it's to some regard. Like, it's so robust, but it's just like this mechanism that, I mean, it's almost divine. It really is. It's like the freedom is like just shot down for the people that want freedom or something. Like, I can't believe how amazing it is sometimes still. Like, I still wake up sometimes and I'm like, I can't believe Bitcoin exists. I mean, you ever have that feeling?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's hope, right? It's a little something different for everyone, right? And the fact that, it came during some very dark times, and the world economy is like you said, it's almost like divine, right? It just sprouted out of nowhere, didn't leave a trace. No one, whoever Satoshi is, didn't need to reveal himself. It wasn't for the purposes of being famous at creating something, right? I think that like anonymity aspect of it is like super cool, just because sometimes the world is divulges into look what I did is so and so, rather than look what I did for people that I don't need to thank you for, or I don't need some sort of special recognition. I think that's a different mindset to just kind of how some things operate in the world.
Good point. I only have a couple more questions for you. What do you think is going to happen the rest of this year? Do you think we're in a super cycle? Obviously, you're talking on your own, not for Blockware or anything like that. But do you think that we're in a super cycle? I'm not a big super cycle theorist. I think we hit the midterm top. I called 65,000 for a long time, so I'm really proud of that. I called that in like 2019. But now that we're here with all of the institutional money coming in, like, I mean, you see it. You guys got a big round of funding. Just everyone, Michael Saylor. I mean, you've just got like some people that are going all in Bitcoin, all in crypto. do you think that that was the midterm top and that we continue on until the end of this year, or because I think that would match up with previous cycles. I think we're probably going to bounce here soon. Now that we're here, I thought 65K would be the top a few years ago, but now that we're here, I really feel like we're probably like we hit it before I thought we were going to hit it. I thought 65K would come in January or December of this year. When I made that video, I didn't know when the bull cycle would start, so I thought it would happen sooner. But now that we're here, I feel like we still have a little ways to go. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, not a trader, not a chartist, none of that. Having looked at, I guess, some of the fractals from 2013 and 2016, 2017, I do think that we could go sideways for a number of months still and still close Q4 and the year really strong. Everyone's kind of said, 100K. I like to see that. It's not gonna be straight up. I continue to see us moving sideways just because there are some, I think, just other macro headwinds like the inflation stuff. Like we may have been right about that thesis in kind of leading up till then. I think it complicates it a little bit more, and that if people don't have that sort of long-term approach, or they just got onboarded into Bitcoin or crypto, the volatility is probably driving them a little crazy, right? I do think that you just keep the long-term approach, things are going to be all right. And like you said, the institutions are just now getting started, right? And the most challenging aspect of them getting started is they need to understand custody. That is also, in my opinion, the biggest barrier of entry, or most challenging educational aspect, is getting people to understand what self-custody is, how it works, because by and large, we've lived our economic lives with trusted third parties to handle everything from our data to our assets. And that's great. But I do think it is going to take, like I said, and I'm not going to say super cycle, but I do think we're not going to have a retracement, a large boom and a large bust, right? I think it's now going to be a more, steady adoption. Like I said, I'm excited to see institutions roll out products and services, getting them onboarded, seeing the excitement for maybe someone who's from a traditional finance background, like, they get a new product to sell, right? They've been selling the same fixed equity or fixed income equity products and services for so long, right? Like whether it's a different company or not doesn't matter. This is a new asset class. I think once the sales forces start going out to the finance institutions, driven by the backs of some of the larger Bitcoin infrastructure companies, was at the Miami conference, and Mike Novogratz at Galaxy was talking about this, right? They need to train these people in order for them to, make good recommendations to their clientele. This is all going to take time, and that, over the next year or two, I think we may trade sideways, but all things considered, there are too many positive momentum factors that I think we're going to continue up on the horizon.
Well, I didn't know you had such a deep interest in stocks, at least previously, before you got into crypto. What do you think about the stock market, like the rest of the year? And like, what do you think? The money printing, are they going to do another quantitative? Are they going to, QE is QE to infinity now, or whatever you want to say, like we've known that for a while. And now the US, like just this stuff that they show, they show on balance sheet or whatever. It's like, I don't even know. What is the US debt now? It's over 30 trillion, isn't it? Or right around 30 trillion. What do you think that, like, are they just going to print more? Or, if they don't print, you see like the economy taking a big dip this year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting that, like I mentioned when I was studying in college, like what I learned very early is don't fight the Fed. So, from an equities perspective, I do think that people are actually starting to understand more about these concepts of inflation and debt, and is this really sustainable? I think inevitably they're going to have to raise rates. I think they're saying, early 2022. I think there's going to be probably more value towards companies that have, profitable operations, actual cash flow, pay dividends, right? These growth stocks that operate on, easy money policy for it's been a decade now. I don't think that is sustainable in any stretch of the imagination, which may complicate some things, right? If a firm can't make those interest payments, right, they go bankrupt. And it's, don't want companies to go bankrupt, but really what the capitalism does is it takes, the assets from the people who don't allocate capital well and create value, and it gives it to those that do. And if you have sustained periods of printed debt, those market mechanisms don't function, right? You could just
they don't work.
You keep taking debt out, and you could live on, I guess, in perpetuity until some reckoning.
Yeah, you have to know who the losers are and move on.
Allocate
those resources. Yeah, that's interesting. Good point. All right, so last question. Well, I guess there's two-part. Where do you see Bitcoin in 2030, and what does Bitcoin mean to you?
2030. So, I think in 10 years that Bitcoin has displaced gold as the premier store of value. I think that'll, 10 years. A few more cycles. I think that's imminent. I do think, and the way it's kind of shaping up in the States is that we're going to enter a period of this is going to become a competitive states issue, right? I think what COVID sort of did is it sort of expedited this remote economy, right? Where it's now people don't necessarily have to show up to a corporate office, right, to be successful. You can kind of create your own path, right? So now states are going to kind of use that as a marketing tool. Or you should come live here, right? And here are all the reasons why, that'd be beneficial. And I do think that it's going to evolve into states eventually, having that in their like treasury so that like individuals can pay taxes in Bitcoin. And I think that's going to add a whole another level of utility to the protocol and the participants. I think, like I said, it's going to be stuff that we're going to be able to get more bang for our buck of, right? Not just kind of buy Bitcoin and throw it in cold storage, or maybe try to get some yield on it in some other form. I do think that we'll have that optionality. And the way we get there, right, is we talked about the education aspect of it. And that's going to be the hardest part, because I've always thought of Bitcoin as you got to try to teach people about everything they might not understand about money and like monetary policy, in addition to everything that they don't understand about the internet,
right,
which are two, very challenging aspects. And, I just think in 10 years that the protocol is, you can look at the wallet stuff. It's going to continue growing. It's kind of following the adoption curve of the internet. And I do think, 2030, it's going to be it's only starting to emerge in culture, but in culture as well. You could already see it. I think it's going to be, like I said, a multi-purpose asset. It will have functions. It could serve as the store of value for some people. It could operate as a currency. I think the network and, the side chains and all the scaling solutions, those will be, taking care of business as well. So you will actually have that choice if it's going to be a store of value, or if you want to, use it as, like I said, how you transact. In a lot of places, I do think more companies are going to bring it on their balance sheets as well. Just because there's so much cash out there, like even a small marginal allocation it just seems like the right business strategy. I think there's more people that are coming around to the understanding of the benefits and what it represents that, inevitably it's, you can kind of serve as a marketing tool, right? You believe, you have these ideas, we're going to put some of this on our balance sheet, and, it's kind of in agreement with these people that, these ideas have kind of been, they've been shouting for them, right? They've been waiting for these, larger ears to perk up and like actually listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's happening. And I think by 2030, we may have 50% of public companies with it on their balance sheet. A lot could happen in 10 years. I think that's definitely possible.
I agree with you. Who was it? Mark Yusko that said get off zero, or
there's more risk being on zero than not.
I agree with you. And what would you say, like, what does Bitcoin mean to you? We've already kind of mentioned about freedom and stuff, but if you want to summarize it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what people to like, I don't think people understand like what a privilege it is to grow up in this country, right, with all the freedoms that we have, but also have the world's reserve currency. Like to step outside that mental bubble, it takes a lot, I think. So, to me, like having a vehicle that has like, individual property rights and freedoms built into it is like already one of the better inventions in human history. The fact that the game theory aspect of it, right, is if we want to, create society where, this is, it's open and mainstream to everyone, is the fact that people that aren't in, this country or might be suffering in other places with, repressive monetary regimes and stuff.
Which is the majority of the world.
It is, yeah, and it's hard for people to understand that. But having the mobility to kind of take and store your wealth, energy in your smartphone, or like memorize, the private key to your wallet and get up and actually leave is like one of the coolest things ever. And I think that's going to, long-term game theory, like that aspect is going to just open up the door to so many people that, like I said, want to get up and leave. They didn't have a choice, that's and now they have a choice, in my opinion. So I like right there, I think that's one of the most important inventions in human history.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the property rights idea. I mean, that's really what it is. It's like just a way to actually have real property rights. I think we haven't had property rights for so long. I mean, if you think about it, that's a kind of a long conversation, and it's a bit of a debate whether we have real property rights outside of crypto. But I sort of fall in the we don't category. I think this is like our first renaissance or whatever you want to call it of property rights, and it's so cool, like you mentioned, to like get them for the whole world. Like, so revolutionary, man. I'm so excited. It just like gives you goosebumps almost, because who would have thought, like we're talking about like growing up in this, like we're sort of like the first real like generation. I'm a little bit older than you, not too much, but a little bit, in the digital epoch or whatever. Like we're like the ones like kind of going through the door first. We've seen like AOL and all these like Messenger and all of these things, and now we're just like, we have the ability to hold property rights on our phone. It's like, doesn't even, it's doesn't seem real sometimes. I do feel like we're in like a sci-fi movie once in a while.
Sometimes I wonder the same things.
Yeah, is this a simulation or not? I don't know. I'm not a simulation guy, but it does kind of feel like it once in a while. But hey, Rocco, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Hopefully I get to talk to you again someday. I learned some new things today that I didn't know.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I'm happy to come on in the future. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and sometime we'll have to get some people together for a stream and watch the Azuri. I know we were both rooting them on last weekend, so Euro champs.
Yeah, well, I think the next World Cup is 2020.
Yeah, I think next winter. So we're like, not this winter, the following. So we're like less than 500 days away. So
awesome. Yeah. Turn on the Azuri.
I'll see you, buddy. Nice talking to you.
Take care.
Hang on one second. I'll say a proper goodbye.